Happy Tuesday, everybody. It is State of the Union Day. I got my red, white, and blue on, just like a kid on Christmas. It's a very exciting day. A reminder, we are not just here at 8:30 a.m., but we will be back at 8:45 p.m. tonight for our special State of the Union show tonight. Rachel, Sean, and I will break down in the first 15 minutes, break down what we expect. We'll then watch it with you and then break down afterwards what happened. And then, of course, you will get all full coverage tomorrow on Wednesday at 8:30. Today, we have a very exciting episode. As you can imagine, we're going to kick off with the State of the Union. What are the risks and opportunities for Trump, for Democrats? Rachel was a busy bee yesterday once she got off out of her neighborhood. Joe, let's just bring this up quickly for those watching. That would be a giant tree or even trees that went down right by Rachel's neighborhood. As we said, she didn't have any power yesterday, but she is back. She'll have some reporting on that. The second, we're going to talk about Congress returning. What a mess. Rachel, we told you yesterday, sign up for RachelBade.com to get her newsletter. Well, if you did that, you woke up this morning to some pretty interesting news. She scooped, and she'll talk about that. 3, we're going to talk about Iran. Trump had an interesting Truth Social. It will be easily won if he decides. We'll talk about that. Number 4 will be Gavin Newsom. Not the way you would want to start a book tour, but here we are. We'll have some thoughts on that. And then lastly, just this fascinating topic, the growing, shifting politics of AI. But let's start with Rachel. You're back. How was a snow day with a 3-year-old and no power?
Not fun. Let's just, you say snow day, and when you say snow day, you think pancakes in the morning, building a snowman, and then watching cartoons or trashy
hot
TV
chocolate
in the afternoon. Yep. Yes. None of that. No water, no heat. It was freezing through the evening. But alas, we eventually, got back up and running. And so it just put me back, how many hours? 12 hours in a work day. I ended up working until 2 a.m. last night. So, such is life. Such is
life. Okay. Well, you were just getting prepped for State of the Union, staying up late.
That's right.
and working.
That's
Sean,
right.
oh, look at this. So, folks, Sean is in Vegas today. Day 2, you notice the attire is getting a little more casual. Looks like he might have been at a table last night. But let me fill you in on something. It turns out that in Vegas, it's hard to get coffee at this hour. Sean, tell everyone the lengths you went to be game day ready at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific.
Yeah, speaking of 8:30, I go to bed in Vegas. When they came by the room to knock on it last night, they woke me up at 8:37 to ask if I needed towels, and I'm like, I've been asleep for an hour. I've got the Huddle, don't you know? Yeah, so they don't. I asked yesterday. I said, what time do y'all start with the coffee or whatever? And they were like 6 a.m., which is 9 your time. So I pre-ordered iced coffee. Got it without ice, put it in my little fridge here, and then got up this morning and walked down the hall and got the ice. So the iced coffee that you see was procured yesterday because apparently Vegas doesn't stay up all night, at least on a Monday night.
Jeez, so, that's embarrassing. I would have thought coffee 24/7. Although maybe if you're at the table, you can probably get it. Right?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I have a feeling that they don't want people like me. They want people who are staying up past 8 o'clock p.m.
You should have asked for an Irish coffee. Just keep the whiskey on the side, and then you probably would have been good to go.
Maybe.
All right. Let's talk about the day book because, again, the big event here in politics, obviously, is tonight. 12:30, Trump is hosting the traditional State of the Union luncheon. Sean, I assume that's with the TV news anchors. That is by tradition, but perhaps Trump has a different audience.
So we started adding in folks during
Yep.
my tenure. We invited different. It wasn't just the network.
Yeah.
And I know that Sarah and others had expanded that when they took over. I have a feeling that this is going to be, to the extent that it's, that there's a tradition piece. Maybe the network's hosts get invited. Traditionally, each network is invited to send one representative.
Yeah.
They get to choose who that is. But I wouldn't be surprised if the White House really incorporates a lot of the independent media this time and kind of eschews the networks. There's other ways too, like the lunch is normally for the network correspondence that they send, and there's been additional briefings that have happened on the side. So, look, with this White House, I would be surprised if they do a sort of a multiple sort of briefing throughout the day, maybe a lunch with certain folks and a coffee or a little reception with others.
That ballroom can't get built fast enough because in 4 years he have 1,000 people. So just folks, the president does this traditionally to kind of preview and influence the coverage as the networks would lead into the speech in the evening, kind of give people a way to think about it. So he'll do that at 12:30, 3 o'clock. Don't miss this. Marco Rubio is briefing the Gang of Eight. That would be the leaders in the intelligence committees in the House and the Senate, and then the actual leadership on Iran. Going to be a lot of questions. We'll get to that topic here later on. 3:15. A handful of Democrats are going to have a press conference with Epstein survivors. Several of them are members of Congress are allowed to bring a guest to the State of the Union. A lot of them are on the Democratic side are bringing Epstein survivors. So this will be interesting. And then obviously 9 o'clock is showtime. But of course, you'll start with us at 8:45 to get the pregame coverage. So before we jump in, because, Sean, Trump likes to sell stuff. The family's active. I don't understand why they would not just say, Cozy Earth, you're going to be the official sponsor of State of the Union. Because You know what, folks? Look, 9 o'clock on the Eastern time, you put your pajamas on, you get your bubble blanket, you light the candle just so it's smelling good, you're feeling good. Settle in, maybe pour yourself something to drink, and fire it up. Watch the State of the Union. Cozy Earth, CozyEarth.com. Use our code Huddle for up to 20% off. Again, the blankets, the pajamas, the joggers. Sean, did you bring a pair with you to Vegas? Or they?
Listen, I packed light, so I have work. I have a pair of jeans and then a pair of works.
Well, you missed your Cozy Earth joggers, right? I mean,
believe me, I sat around yesterday and I thought it was actually the perfect outfit for lounging around the hotel and getting work done. But yeah, I kept thinking, Rachel was talking about being snowed in. I'm like, if I were snowed in, the first thing I would do is grab that Cozy Earth bubble blanket.
Of course.
I will say, my mother-in-law is here. I gave her the bubble cuddle blanket because I wanted to make sure she was warm. I woke her up like in the middle of the night. I was like, you're going to be cold. We just lost our heat. Have the bubble cuddle blanket.
I mean, look, anyway. all politics is local, Rachel. In-laws, all of us can attest. You got to keep the in-laws please. Happy. So again, go to CozyEarth.com, use our code Huddle. So, all right, let's get into the State of the Union night. Rachel, let's start with you. You were up on or kind of around town yesterday evening. Again, once you got out of jail, so to speak here. Rachel, what is, how are folks on the Hill, the White House, how are they thinking about tonight? The opportunities and obviously there is worry about some risks because this is Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, risks. I would say, just to start with Republicans, I would say there's quite a bit of trepidation on tonight. I mean, there's a lot of potential, pitfalls that he could hit. I think a lot of Republicans, obviously, they want him to do what you would think, Susie Wiles and James Blair are telling the president, which is, go up there, tout your accomplishments. You have a ton you can talk about the work you've done on affordability so far, empathize with people, say the work will continue into 2026 and make the case that Republicans should maintain power to continue that work. But he's had a number of tough headlines recently, and there's a fear that he could really go off script. I mean, you think about what the justices just did in terms of knocking down his sweeping economic policy built around tariffs. When the president gets hit, he punches back 50 times harder. These guys are going to be sitting right in front of him, the justices. Can he resist the urge to go after them? And if he does, that becomes the story. And you lose this moment where you have 30 million Americans tuning in and like the potential to make this case and reset the narrative. So they're worried about that. They're also worried about him pushing populist ideas that they don't like. He's talked about the credit card swipe fee caps. He's talked about the credit card interest rate caps. This whole thing about limiting corporations from buying up family homes. Very popular with Democrats and very popular with the American public. But Republicans don't want to do it. So is he going to push them on that? Is he going to push them on tariffs? And then the last thing I'd say is, there's always a fear about of the president saying, it's mission accomplished on the economy. He can't say that. He sort of, went back to that talking point last week when he said that he's won on affordability issues. That's not the case. And he can't say that because then Democrats just use that and sort of pummel him for saying something like that. So, yeah.
Sean, what are you hearing? I mean, you have done one of these. You've been 17. How is this team thinking about it, and what are you hearing here?
Yeah, the thing that's interesting about Rachel's reporting is that when people say that to me, I get the worry and the consternation that she's hearing from members. To me, though, it's lacked any sense. This is the problem with so many of these members of Congress, is that they don't actually stop and think about reality. This will be his 6th one of these, including the 2 joint addresses. Every one of them, he has stuck to the script. Every one of them. They have, by and large, received widespread praise. Remember, it's a speech. This isn't a rally. The president understands the forum and the platform that a State of the Union offers more than anybody. He understands the showmanship of it. If you think about what he did last year with DJ, the young boy suffering, I mean, like, he won massive accolades. He knew how to draw a contrast. I just think every time there's an event, these members of Congress get all their panties in a wad and start hand wringing in. Oh my God, what if? This guy didn't get elected not understanding how to win a crowd. He didn't get elected not understanding the magnitude of this platform. So I get their constant whining and worrisome, but just look at the track record. He has given 6 really good speeches that have won. Again, you don't have to like Trump. You can totally dislike, in the same way that I thought Biden was out of touch, et cetera. But the last speech he gave, they won that dude up on Celsius. And, and he gave a good speech, but a good speech is not a good presidency. Right. And I'll say this, the same thing, but Trump will give a good speech tonight. You can totally dislike him and acknowledge the fact that he played a good game. I think he will play a great game tonight.
Yeah. So let's bring up their Poly Markets has some great opportunities to think about certain words that may come up tonight in the State of the Union. How many times might he mention or the probability that he'll mention the Middle East, he'll mention America, he'll mention winning. So always interesting that now people can think about the State of the Union that way. Let me ask you both. I think we all agree that the power of clips these days, to go viral on social media is almost the whole ball game. It used to be you tried to appeal to the evening news, then it became kind of the 2-minute segments on cable. Now it's like the 30 seconds. For each, Sean, if the White House could say, all right, if you had to guess, because they are masters at this, what do you think may be their kind of 2 or 3 clips that you think they hope go viral, and what might be a clip that they worry about could go viral?
So if I were them, I said this yesterday, the natural inclination is to sit the U.S. hockey team up in the First Lady's box. Yeah, I would have them marched onto the floor, completely off script, literally bring them down to the well, march them in one door, out the other, and say, ladies and gentlemen, the men and women of the U.S. hockey team. And so there's, as Rachel knows, when you look down at the chamber, you got if you're staring from where we'll be looking at the rostrums in front, there's a door on the right, a door on
Nope.
Go out the other, stop, take a bow, and go.
Okay.
Right. But then really try to see how many Dems get up, clap for them. I mean, I would say that to me would be a very powerful patriotic moment. I do think, to Rachel's point, there is going to be a temptation for him to make a swipe at the Supreme Court on trade. And what that contrast looks like with not just what he says, because he won't be able to not look at them when he says it. Do they mouth something back the way Alito did to Obama, etc.? I'm also intrigued, by the way, how many show up.
Yeah.
You know, I could see 3 of them showing up and the rest of them not.
He called them rhinos just a couple days ago, like rhinos, corrupt.
Rhinos. Look, is one thing. When he said they were a disgrace to their families, I think that was a little bit.
So, Rachel, if you were writing a column here today, what couple things might you look for? Do you think may go viral? I mean, just knowing kind of the topics out there, how would you, what would you be on the edge of your seat for here?
Look, the thing I'm looking forward to most, and by the way, I will write a column tonight, Dan. So people should look for it in the morning.
Rachel's not sleeping for 48 hours, folks.
No, let's just stay up. Lots of coffee. I totally agree with Sean in that, like, I'm excited to see what his team comes up with in terms of those real world examples of his policies. I think back on the president's State of the Unions, and I've been to a bunch of them, and like a lot of those moments are what stick out. Like, the moment when in 2020 he brought in the husband, the spouse who was serving overseas in Afghanistan, hadn't seen his wife in so long. She's in the front and she thinks she's just being honored by the president, for being a military spouse. And in walks her husband she hasn't seen. And the place just erupts. It's moments like that. It's like Sean said, the DJ Daniel example, that 13-year-old brain cancer survivor who just wants to be a Secret Service agent, and they're going to make him an honorary Secret Service. I think those moments are incredible. I think they travel far on social media. And I think it's just watching Democrats and how they react to that. Like, they always look so awkward. They don't know whether to clap. They don't know whether to stand. And I wrote this in my column. It's okay to clap in moments like this. These are human moments. It's okay to do that.
I think that's the thing for Democrats. I mean, I kind of, Sean, you and I talked about this yesterday. If the hockey team or any Olympic athlete, gold medal or not, walks in, you get up, you clap, you celebrate, you lead the chant of USA. I think the interesting thing for Democrats is there's 3 things. One is that they believe that Trump is going to get up there tonight and not talk to the middle of the country, but talk to his base, that he is going to kind of remind them of all the things that they wanted that he has done, and kind of, as you say, Rachel, not quite say mission accomplished, but kind of say like everything is great, that they think he is not going to talk to the middle of the country. So I think you're going to try to see Spanberger, they believe, is a better messenger, and that's where she will be focused. 2 is they are watching this kind of, is he with the good stuff, like you just said, the heartwarming stuff that's just apple pie you eat up and say, that's great, or is he angry and nasty? It's not even just, Sean, that he goes off the teleprompter, but his tone, right? He can get hot under the collar with passion. If you like him, he's fired up. If you don't, it can be a turnoff. And then the third thing is, and this is a worry, it's being reported that quite a few Democrats are going to walk out during this speech. When they do that, what is and Sean's clapping if you're not watching, and I'm, getting ready to start crying because I think it's a horrible idea. And I think that it is disrespectful. I think a lot of people around the country who are not partisans will just say, you look childish, you look, sophomoric. And they already think Trump's behavior is not great. You're just kind of neutralizing the issue, meaning you're both obnoxious. You're both, and so I'll be curious if this does happen, what issue is the motivator? And then are they gone when one of these heartwarming things happens? And suddenly it's you look small.
So here's the deal. This goes back to what I said earlier. This is not their first rodeo. Yeah. When you do this kind of prep, this is the kind of stuff that is discussed. They are walking through the lines, how it's going to go over. The president, again, gets stage cues better than anybody else. He understands the pomp and circumstance, to Rachel's point about, he knows how to do, he did reality television for 15 years. The guy understands the big reveal. So, all of these things, and he understands that what they're going to do, right? He has talked, like, they're going to prep. Okay, we're going to talk about the tariffs in the court. The court's likely going to be sitting, going to say this. What do you want to do? He's going to talk about the prepared walkout. How do you want to handle that? This is what we think is going to happen. But Trump is going to, I look, again, as I say, you can hate every policy, but understand that he's the greatest showman to ever occupy this office, and so he is going to rise to this. And this is the danger that the Democrats have, is that he will outdo them. The platform, the forum, and his skill set are better than any of theirs.
Well,
and so this is the downside. You walk out.
The other challenge, Sean and Rachel, obviously, if you were, when you write, you'll be looking for this, is Democrats have multiple counter-programming State of the Unions that are now going to be going on around town. You're going to have one down on the mall. You have some that are
Who doesn't have one?
Yeah. That are focused on specific constituencies. Here is another worry that Democratic leaders have, because just the law of averages. Does somebody say something there that goes viral for the wrong reason? Right? Somebody gets hot, a speaker, we're going to talk about Gavin Newsom in a minute. You think you're speaking to that audience and that audience gets it. But to the average American, they're like, what on earth did you just say? And if the ultimate showman has, the gold-plated clip, going around with people chanting USA, and Democrats have one in a poorly lit, area that's ranting and raving, the contrast is going to be brutal. And so the leadership is very worried about this.
Look, they can't do anything. This is sort of, you can't stop the members from doing this, but this is a clown show. I mean, this is the ultimate definition of a political circus. You've got like a little ring over here and a little ring over here, and somebody's in a bar talking to their iPhone. I mean, this literally looks like a 3-ring circus. And here's the problem, Dan, it's so diluted that even with no one watches the response to begin with, except for political junkies who really care. And you really think that
I take that as a compliment. Thank you.
No, I watch them. I love them. But aside from this, you have a hard enough time. I mean, look, part of the reason that I think Trump, again, this gets back to the showman. He said it's going to be a long speech. Part of it is he gets that people will start tuning out. So what do they tune out? They're definitely tuning out the Dem response. My guess is last year was record at 99 minutes. I think we're well into 110 this time. And so you're nearing 2 hours. That means it's 11 o'clock. People are going night, right? Yeah. And they're not going to stay up for Abigail Spanberger, never mind some wingnut rank and file that's sitting in a bar with their iPhone.
Yeah, let's go. Wait, some of us have to do the post-show discussion and then write a column and then get up early to do the show the next morning.
Well, all right. So look, the other part of this is Congress was on recess last week. Then with the snowstorm, they couldn't get back into town yesterday. They're all hopefully back at times today, although it's still kind of treacherous out there. Rachel, you wrote a column this morning. We talked the other day about Congressman Gonzalez. More stuff is coming out. Talk about the mood on, particularly in the House. Sean, I'm going to ask you next about the Senate with the SAVE Act. But Rachel, what is the mood amongst Republicans as they come back here?
They're pissed, in a word, and not just at Anthony Gonzalez or Tony Gonzalez, but also at the Speaker. I mean, they just think he has totally bungled his handling of this situation. We are now a week out from the Texas primary, and this story started percolating months ago. It started percolating in October when we first heard these allegations that this guy had an alleged affair with a staffer who then went on to commit suicide. Nothing was done about it. There was no push by the Speaker to investigate. There was no calls for the House Ethics Committee to take it up. He did not make internal inquiries, from my understanding, to the office. And apparently a lot of people knew about what was going on. Backs him, gets the president to endorse him in December. And here we are a week out, and these new text messages are coming out. Just a little flavor of them here. They're really ugly. I mean, pressuring the staffer to detail her favorite sex position, pressuring the staffer to send him a, quote, sexy pic, pressing the staffer to meet him in person. And at least twice on these text threads, she pushed back on him before eventually relenting months later. And I ended up tweeting something about this because it's a perfect example of, this power dynamic and the problematic power dynamic and the reason why you cannot have these relationships, right? You have a girl who pushed back on her boss, and how do you handle that situation? Eventually she gets pulled in, right? And as soon as I started tweeting about this, I had a bunch of members just cold call me. I haven't heard from them in a long time and say this was bungled. Like in the past, speakers brought people in, they pushed them out, or they called for investigations. Instead, because of the slim majority, this was swept under the rug, and now it's exploding right before the primary. So people are not happy.
Yeah. And of course, also out there is the DHS shutdown, which continues. Polymarket here has a thing about how many days the government is going to be, shut down. And as you can see, 99% think it'll be at least 14, 21 days or longer, 82%, 30 days or longer, 65%. I mean, I can tell you, talking to Democrats, they don't feel any pressure. They truly think that the Republicans are living in their own echo chamber. They think that the country is with them. I'm a little skeptical. I think we may also be talking to ourselves in our own echo chamber. But Sean, you got what's going on in the House. I guess Republicans got some good news yesterday. The congressman from Florida announced he will serve his term out unless he were to pass away. His intent now is not to resign early. And you have Thune, who has heard about it on the SAVE Act. Sean, how do you think, the GOP is thinking about all of this? You got that Texas Senate primary next week. Primary season in general is about to kind of start for a lot of folks.
Yeah. Let me go back to the Gonzalez thing again on Rachel's reporting, because this is a super important thing. Because you are going to get this crescendo effect. The Gonzalez district, and I've got to look at the new lines, but under the old lines, it's a quasi competitive district, and so it's not just some ruby red district where you're like, okay, well, let a primary play out and we'll keep it no matter what, right? This is not. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head that's like you just don't have to worry about it. I'm just trying to explain. I'm not trying to excuse, just for people to understand this. But to Rachel's reporting on this, like, you realize we're down to a 1-seat majority. So when all these members complain about the speaker handling it, and I agree, like back in November, they could have gotten ahead of this a little bit more and said, okay, there's a primary. We do have an opportunity to potentially change horses, or at least not encourage the president to endorse Gonzalez. But once that ship sailed, they're in a bit of a pickle here, because I don't know enough about the guy that's primarying him. It sounds like they may end up with him anyway. But then the question is, can you hold the district? But right now, if Tony Gonzalez resigns today, there would be a motion to vacate the chair. I mean, and so like you again, just stop for a second and recognize what that means. Like, you could potentially have, depending on the way the winds blow on any given day, a Speaker Jeffries, at least for a day, maybe a week, motion to reorganize. There's a bunch of stuff that could happen. And so I get the concern about how the speaker handled this initially, but he's now in a massive pickle. And I think both in terms of the short term and the long term, if they win the primary, I guess with enough money, you can probably ensure that you keep that district. But this is something that, like, it's easy to criticize if you're a rank and file member. And again, I'm not saying that the speaker handled this perfectly. Don't get me wrong on that. But I'm saying, like, this is a big deal because you're literally talking about the majority. You're talking about, Dan, you mentioned the other day what the Dems would do if something happened short term. You've got a member in Florida that has particular health issues. Who knows how serious those are? Is it just that he wants to resign prematurely? Or does he have serious health issues that might actually imperil the majority sooner? But you could go from literally having a 1-seat majority to a -1 if Gonzalez and Deal both resign. So this is, and you go to the White House and you say, oh, by the way, James Blair, Susie Wiles, Mr. President, this is where we are. These guys retire, resign. If Gonzalez, remember, the guy, if he loses the primary on March 3rd, he still would have to serve out his full term. If he were to retire, you don't get to just appoint the new guy. This isn't the Senate. So they have real considerations about maintaining this majority that I don't think can be overlooked. And all of these members who are saying refer him to the ethics committee, I get it. I'm not dismissing. These are serious. I mean, look, when you see those text messages that Rachel referred to, there's more. Like the dumbness, the idea that you thought that it was appropriate ever. And then secondly, that you are dumb enough to put this in text. She's literally saying at one point, she says, "You've gone too far, boss," clearly defining that there's a workplace relationship that she still sees as, then she says at one point, "Tony, you've gone too far." Like, this is, I just, for myriad of reasons, this is unbelievable.
And I think you're going to hear Democrats say, and you've started hearing some of them already, they're protecting Jeffrey Epstein, the Epstein class, and now they're protecting a member of Congress. And it's all about power.
Well,
can they force a vote to try to expel him?
Sure, you can make a motion.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
it's
kind
a
of wondering if
motion.
they do that. I will expect it at some point. They're going to censure. There's no doubt. But like,
but there's an issue, Rachel, which is once you've got some members on the Dem side, and the question is, once you really go, I think Republicans learned their lesson with George Santos, thinking we'll be better, we'll smart, we'll kick this guy out who hasn't technically at that point, he had not been convicted of anything. And then Republicans started to go down the list of some of these Democrats. You've got the member in Florida that literally stole, what was it, $14 billion of COVID funds. And Democrats are saying, well, she hasn't been convicted of anything. We start going down this path. And I know Democrats realize, okay, you want to litigate every allegation of impropriety in your staff as well, because there's a few on the Dem side too. So we could be going to full scale issue. But anyway, that's that. I will say, Dan, to your other question, to pivot back, is this SAVE Act thing is not going anywhere. Republicans in the base demand answers. When Mike Lee is out there talking about the talking filibuster, it's going to crescendo. They cannot walk away from this. This is something that we have as a party been dealing with now for 6-7 years, since at least the 2020 election. And I don't think this idea of like, we don't have time because we have to do permitting reform, which is the John Thune answer, is going to hold water. So I would expect I expect the president to discuss it tonight.
Yeah.
Why we need to pass the SAVE Act. And I just don't. I think Thune better be willing to at least show that he's at least willing to try.
Rachel, you hearing anything on that? No.
I think he's gonna walk away from it at some point. I mean, he'll put up a show, they'll put up a vote, like a procedural thing, and then eventually I think they will walk away, and I think he'll get pummeled for it. But I don't see him changing rules. I really don't at this point.
Well, there's a lot to watch here. And obviously tonight, as you say, Sean, he's likely going to address the SAVE Act. So let's go to this third thing here. And I know, Rachel, you've got some thoughts here on this, on Iran here.
Oh, no, I want to hear your guys' thoughts. So just to recap, people. So the president said Monday that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane, that he was predicting a war with Iran, if it comes to that, would be, quote, something easily won. But then there were multiple reports after that is actually not true, that General Kane has actually warned privately that these strikes could sort of trigger a lengthy military engagement. We have talked about this on the show. But like, I read these stories and my first reaction was somebody wanted this out there. It wasn't just one person who put it out there. It was multiple organizations that reported it. They reported that JD Vance was apparently, asking questions about the risks of this. And like, I'm curious, like Sean, did you take that as like factions inside the administration trying to send a signal to the president, like, just don't go there? And I'm also like, my other question on this is like, why would they leak that? Like, doesn't that undermine our negotiating hand with Iran?
Well, they didn't leak that. The people
somebody did, and it seemed like somebody wanted it out there. That of course there were these conflicting things.
Because there's somebody, generally speaking, there is some, deep state type of person who's in the room, because you have a lot of sort of that's how it works. Who doesn't like how the president's approaching foreign policy. This happened during Afghanistan as well. And they want to make sure that they create this impression of the president acting erratic or without full, belief. And this goes back to, again, I understand why when we have a country the way it is, with the number of people who haven't served and definitely served it at a certain level, this is how the process is supposed to work. You go into any normal military situation with a minimum of 3 COAs and say, these are our options. This is how a commander gets briefed all the way up to the president of the United States. But it starts at your battle, like the low commander who then briefs up, keeps going. You don't come in with a decision. That's the job of the commander to do. And all the way up. So when you go into the tank or the sit room, the standard protocol is to have a minimum of 3 courses of action. Here's 1, 2, 3, sometimes up to 5. Here's what we think will happen under this scenario. Here's what happen under this scenario. Here's what happen under this scenario. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist, and because I've been saying this, clearly proving that it doesn't take a rocket scientist. But what General Kane is reported to have said is consistent with everything that I've said, and he is much more skilled than I ever will be. The point is that to say, God, you go in and you really push for regime change in Iran, it's going to take a follow-on force. No kidding. What did you think was going to happen? I mean, I don't think any of this, and what he is advising the president is, hey, here are the things that we can do, the options that will be surgical, that will take out assets, et cetera, inflict pain, potentially bring them to the negotiating table. If we go farther, this is what we're going to do, and this is the likely outcome. And as I said, there is nobody that can predict what's going to happen if you go in and do full-on regime change. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have and how many wars you fought in. This is not an extraction or a quick hit.
Dan, how did you read that story? And let's actually pull up this Poly Market. Do we have it? The Poly Market about when people think the U.S. will strike.
We do. They have different dates here. March 7th, March 15th. It actually has even some more in there. Look, I was stunned that Trump put out, and I guess I shouldn't have been, that if I do this, it'll, and he's kind of pointing the finger at somebody, right? He says it will be easily won, because Trump's brand is always strength, ease, and dominance, right? He does not, we talk about this with affordability. He doesn't do nuance well. He doesn't do sacrifice well. He doesn't do long game well. And I think what is going on, and this reminds me a little bit of in the lead up to the Iraq war, when you had kind of this leaking from people saying, be careful, right? You go in, you break it, you own it. Hey, there's a reason that, Bush, H.W. Bush, didn't cross the line, got him out of Kuwait, but didn't go in. I think what people are saying is, look, we did a pinprick the first time. It kind of worked. But you think that we're going in, I think the whole ballgame now is regime change. That's all this is now about, which is you're going to hit their missiles again. You're going to hit their nuclear research again. We'll all argue, is it set back 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever. But at the end of the day, if the regime that is hell-bent on achieving both remain, you're going to be right back at square one. So the question is, do you take them out? And once you swing for the king, you better not miss, meaning you and the Israelis need to go all in. And now what you're saying to the American people, because again, Sean, you and I keep saying this, and Rachel, I think you agree too. We can all tell you why Israel wants this done. We cannot tell you what the imperative for the American national security is today. Why does this have to be done right now? We can speak broadly. The region's a mess. Oil, they fund terrorism, but nuclear that terrorism mostly targets Israel. Just the cold, hard reality about this. So I think Trump is in a little bit of a pickle right now. And I think that they're all laying the markers because they know, let's be honest, if this goes sideways, Trump is going to point the finger. Going to say, you said this.
So can I just 3 quick points on this? Number one, we mentioned the Poly Market. I got to tell you, it's really funny. If you've been watching this ever since that first strike, there's a dude who allegedly made a ton of money because he tracked pizza orders from, I believe there's a Pizza Hut and a Domino's within a 1 mile radius of the Pentagon, probably right there in Pentagon City. And so Hegseth joked yesterday that he's going to start ordering random pizzas on the Domino's app to throw off any sort of, I think it was a bit tongue in cheek, but I think it's funny for those of you who are now watching the guy who monitors pizza orders from the proximity of the Pentagon. Second, Dan, I'll agree with you. I don't think there's any real scenario in which he wants a full-on regime change. I think this is going to come in, and I've been talking about this for a while. In terms of the assets that are around, you're going to see a series of strikes on critical assets in Iran that will claim victory on taking them out. Now, whether, again, it sets them back 6 months, 6 years, I think they're buying time. Like, we're not in a position to go on for full-on regime change. Not going to happen. The key is going to be to minimize the retaliatory response from Iran in terms of our assets and our personnel in the region. You saw the evacuation of the Beirut. I mean, like, you're going to see a lot more notifications for our folks to get out of the region. That's going to be your big signal. And then lastly, I'll just say this. When the president talks about winning, I think, again, we have to keep in mind that there's two separate issues at hand. There's winning the sort of the strike, coming in, achieving your goals, which is, did you take out these assets? Yes. And then there's the long term. Did you achieve, some bigger strategic goal, whether that's regime change or whatever? But every military operation is defined by whatever that goal was. So if the goal is to take out critical assets, both military, civilian, some potential research ones on nuclear capability, and you hit them and you take them out, then you won. So I think the definition
but he hasn't defined it though, right?
Well, no, I get it. And but that's why I'm saying, I think, to your point though, I think part of this is how you're going to define. So if he comes out and says, earlier tonight, I ordered the strike of 15 assets, they were all taken out, which again, the military is going to do with absolute precision, then you can claim victory. It's just, you're narrowing the scope. So I do think you're going to see that happen probably in the next 10 days. We're going to take out assets, claim victory, and then move on.
Well, we will keep tracking that. I want to get Dan, though, on Gavin Newsom's Manic Monday. So California governor's memoir, Young Man in a Hurry, publishes today, and he is stirring up buzz, as Dan said at the top of the show, although perhaps not in the way he originally intended. Let's pull up this clip. The right is basically having this heyday right now over this viral clip from a fireside chat he had with Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens. And the allegation is that he was condescending to Black people in the room. Let's play it.
I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just trying to impress upon you. I'm like you. I'm no better than you. I'm a 960 SAT guy. and I'm not trying to offend anyone, trying to act all there if you got 940. But literally a 960 SAT guy. I cannot, you've never seen me read a speech because I cannot read a speech. Maybe the wrong business to be in.
Dan, what was your reaction to that? Like, do you think people on the right were correct that this is a bad look?
It is a bad look because the average person, right, D or R, or, person going about their life is not going to think about the context of that remark, right? They probably aren't going to listen to the whole thing. Newsom's team's answer initially was, well, he has made this reference, this kind of joke, use this example of kind of trying to relate many times, right? And that may be true. The issue is you're now running for president, or thinking of running for president. You are, by most accounts, if not the Democratic favorite today, you're one of the top 2 or 3 favorites. Meaning everything you say now is under the microscope. And all your history and all the contextualization that may in your head be wrapped around something is gone, because you are making first impressions now to a lot of people. And so I think for him, he stepped in it. I'm sure if he could go back, he would not give that example. And I'm going to bet, a lot of money that he will not use that reference again. And I think what's in, right, which is your ultimate tell if it was a good answer or not. I think what's interesting now is, one, the right is not going to let up on this. So they're going to keep reminding him of it. 2, I am really curious about Kamala Harris, because we've talked about this in the past. Jill Biden is going to take to her grave that in 2019, at the first Democratic debate, she went after Joe Biden on busing legislation from the 70s. And that was designed because in South Carolina,
that little girl.
Biden had the Black support coming off of his time as vice president for Barack Obama. He was popular. She was trying to break it off. She was trying to drive a wedge and say to the Black community, you need to think more about this guy and you should be with me. Here's Gavin Newsom, her rival, it's he and her mostly in the lead. Does she at some point in the next week try to take advantage of this? And guys like Jim Clyburn, who have spoken highly, and women in the Congressional Black Caucus spoken highly of Gavin, do they defend him? Do they remain silent? So I'm going to be really curious to see how Gavin, because he is going to be in South Carolina. There's a big gathering on Friday of Democrats in South Carolina. Joe Biden is going to give a speech because it will be the 6th anniversary of his big primary win there. I have a feeling we're going to hear more about this as much as Gavin Newsom wants it to go away. It's not.
Sean, before you jump in, can I just say a couple things? One is that apparently there are questions about whether this was a black audience. Like apparently it wasn't a black audience per se.
Okay.
And so this, okay. So Sean, I want to hear what you have to say because this is some of the pushback, right? Yep. From his team and from his defenders. And the other thing his defenders say is that he talks all the time about, having dyslexia and is trying to make the point that he's not some Ivy League snoot. Yeah, clearly not in the best way he could have done so. But go ahead, Sean, jump on in.
Yeah, so let me just take this head on because actually now I'll go in this order. He's also on record, and multiple clips have come up, that he can read a 263-page book really quickly, and he's great at reading. I mean, like, he is now contradicting himself. The clips, you've got to be careful when you tell anecdotes like this because there are now clips popping up all over the internet with him talking about reading these books, and he loved getting through this, and it was a quick read, and I love reading. So then to get up and say, and I can't even read a book, it's like, okay, you literally have to think about, this is Dan's point. You're in the big leagues now, buddy, and you can't tell contradictory stories all over the place and not think that somebody's going to catch you. Number two, you talked about the audience. Okay, look, sorry, Gavin, you guys are big into your pronouns, so let me go back to what you said. You were talking to the mayor and you said, I'm not like you. That was the pronoun he chose. He was referring to the black mayor there, not the audience. He said you. So to be honest with you, I found that as an individual, if I was the mayor, I'd say, I scored 1040, like I scored 1200. It actually was a very condescending comment to make to a host.
Look at the mayor's face. He cringed. The mayor
of course
did not laugh at that. Yeah.
No, because
I took the you to be the audience, as in I agree that you was a terrible use of terrible.
Right, but this is again, you can't live by the sword, die by the sword. And they've been great at going after Trump and talking about like what he meant, and that was racist and that and this and that. So now you get to play by the same rules, big boy. This is how this works. It seems like he took his talking points in his response. He called up Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and says, what do I do? I'm in a pickle. Because he just is flailing in the response to this. That's the other thing. And the last thing I'll say is, look, after going after Donald Trump and perpetuating the Charlottesville hoax, the Russia hoax, like to have these guys get a taste of their own medicine, I'm all for it. But listen, it's just hysterical. He screwed up. He stepped in it. It was unbelievably condescending, whether it crossed the line into racist. But the idea that you're sitting on stage and telling a host, I'm like you, I only scored a 960.
Scores. Yeah.
Like I was like, dude, so sorry, you guys want to perpetuate hoaxes?
Wow, but I think what's fascinating is his response was out of the Trump playbook. Right. I mean, we talk about how I think it's bad luck that JD Vance is cursing and doing this. If the shoe were on the other foot and Trump did this and Trump issued the same tweet Newsom did, we would all say, well, that's on brand, right? That is Trump punching back, the sharp language, to be indignant, to just flamethrow. And again, there's a part of the Democratic base that will look at Gavin and say, amen. Trump makes, crazy remarks all the time. But I keep saying this. It feels like Gavin's running yesterday's race. If I'm looking forward, right, part of the Democratic calculation is there's going to be an exhaustion with this behavior. But Gavin is just embracing it and doubling down. And that, I think, is the long-term strategic mistake that he's making with these indignant F-bomb posts.
Let's talk about the shifting politics of AI. So there's a bunch of different headlines we can dissect in this section. First, the Secretary of War is going to be trying to browbeat Anthropic CEO at a meeting at the Pentagon today. This is, of course, as they are fighting the company and the Pentagon about how the Pentagon can use AI models. Basically, the Pentagon wants more freedom. The company says they want the Pentagon to commit that they won't use AI to survey Americans, and they won't use it to sort of set off weapons without some sort of human, oversight or contact of some sort, or human control of some sort. But we also have news from the Wall Street Journal that the president is going to be announcing a ratepayer protection pledge, which is basically this notion that top tech companies are going to pay increased electricity costs from communities where they have these AI data centers. That's probably going to be pretty popular, I would think. And then there's, of course, this headline, the White House taking a stand. Go ahead. Jump in.
I get this, and it may buy some short term, but look, Dan brought this up last week. I totally agree. Rachel, I don't know where you're, but out in that Northern Virginia area, Loudoun County, people are pissed about these data centers. It's not just the rates, it's what they're potentially doing health wise, the jobs. I mean, I get this is a DC answer that I think is somewhat missing the mark. That the idea that somehow we'll just placate you by throwing some cash your way, I don't think is necessarily going to be the answer that people are looking for. It'll be interesting to see, but I think this debate on AI, as I said, social media, AI, data centers are something that the DC crowd has yet to really figure out yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I was out an AI event last night on AI and the future of healthcare. And I got to say, it was extremely positive. The things that they are projecting we will be able to do and be able to catch in the future is just astounding. But at the same time, a lot of people obviously have a lot of concerns about this. I haven't seen it yet in terms of my electricity bill and what it's going to do with these data centers around my area. But you're right. People are talking about it out here.
There's also a bigger issue. And I'm sorry, this is, but there is a nuclear component to this that I don't know why we're not talking up more. I mean, it is, to me, I'm not an energy expert. To me, this is the solution and the discussion that we really need to be happening, because it is only going to grow more, and there's only certain sources of energy that have the capacity to deal with this. But I think, again, we want to sort of dance around what really needs to be the conversation.
I just think that the politics of AI are shifting so fast, and it is not partisan. It is Ron DeSantis is now kind of going to war with David Sachs in the White House about some form of AI regulation in the state of Florida. Josh Shapiro, who I think we all agree is a pretty good politician, was very bullish on AI a year ago, is now kind of running away from the issue and trying to think of ways to kind of, because he sees and hears this movement. I talked about what I heard last week off the record about what is happening on the ground in Pennsylvania. Again, Josh Shapiro, he was not there, but he's, I think, hearing the same thing. I just think, and you see Wall Street, yesterday totally gyrated because of one research report on a Sunday night about another industry or industries that are going to be affected. Trump likes it, and Democrats, Biden talked about the market. Trump likes to talk about the market. The market doesn't know how to price this stuff. They don't know what's coming around the corner. I think Americans are scared of the impact to their lives, their children's lives. They're scared of these data centers themselves. And what you have in Washington is classic, which is there's a lot of money for campaigns that's being put on the table. It's jobs in districts. So people say, great, you're going to 3,000 construction jobs, to build this thing. And to Sean's point, DC's the last in on the joke. Guys, this is shifting. And so I think it's so fascinating as we head into the midterms. And we talk about what's going to dominate 2028. None of us can predict the top 5 issues. I bet this is one of the top 5.
Yeah, I think people would agree with you. But you also have to think about this is the future, right? So you can't just put it aside and say we're not going to do this, because our adversaries are going to.
100%.
So
right.
It's definitely there's a lot of questions about what does it look like?
But understand that this is what's going on, and this is the reality. I agree with you 100%. The future is coming, and the question is whether you take it head on, or you can't just say we're not going to deal with it. It's like rain. For sure. You don't go, hey, the rain's coming tomorrow. Let's just put it off. It's coming. But how we deal with it, and what's going on in DC is like what happened with big food, big pharma, big ag, which is they're coming in, they're flooding the zone. Meta is dropping tens of millions of dollars.
60 million reportedly on state races. That's unheard
on state
of.
Races, right? And think about Dan's point about DeSantis. It's not just DeSantis. These guys are going in from the White House. And I get why they're doing it, by the way, which is this is the internet fight of 1994, which is, do you want to regulate stuff? I mean, back then it was from a commerce standpoint, we put a moratorium. George Allen and others were at the forefront of this fight to lead it to say, we do not want to regulate the internet and let states have a patchwork of 50 different places that the internet companies have to go because it will stifle innovation. I get that part. But at the end of the day, these governors are reading the room and saying, I'm not going to be the one that allows this to move forward and not have raised my hand. Data centers, what it's going to do to jobs, the impact it's having on kids. I mean, there's a million things, energy costs, blah, 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 blah. And the idea that these tech companies are coming in and just spreading money to the politicians saying, you guys shut your mouths, don't say anything, go along, get along, and we'll talk to you guys in 10, 15 years when we know about the consequences. I think this is, to me, both parties are going to start to realize that this is not a smart issue to be on the forefront of.
Dan, final word before we do questions?
I agree with Sean.
Okay. All right, let's take some questions. All right, here. How do you think the new Pentagon's media access policy, where they kicked out most reputable news outlets last year, affects current reporting on military matters? The New York Times reported many troops evacuated from bases in Qatar and Bahrain, later proven false. Who to trust? I don't know. I wasn't familiar with that story from New York Times. Are you guys familiar with that?
I didn't know the Times reported that specifically. I know we've talked about this. Look, I didn't think it was a good look. The Pentagon did it, what is it now, 9 months ago, 6 months ago. But they've doubled down on this. On the other hand, so much reporting now is on X from people on the ground who, notice, abnormal things like pizza deliveries or, planes taken off at random hours in random formations. I don't know.
I would say you don't have to be at the Pentagon to get information. Like these reporters are still getting it. Think about like the New York Times and the New York Times and the Journal that had found out about what was going to happen in Venezuela with Maduro before it happened, and chose not to report it. Obviously, like nobody wants to put American troops in jeopardy, but one of the reporters literally like called the president at like 4 a.m, like right after the raid finished because they knew it was happening, and they're not there. So I don't know that it impacts. I don't think it impacts reporting. I just think it looks, it's not a good look for Pete Hegseth, in my personal opinion, as a reporter.
I don't think it impacts reporting at all. And we've seen that. And so, and then to the second point, I mean, they've been wrong, whether they're inside the building or outside the building. So I've never trusted, the New York Times has never sort of been a source of trust for me. Yeah.
Okay. Let's take another one. Okay, what are your thoughts on this Huffington Post article that was posted on the last day of the Winter Olympics? The story says, waving the American flag or chanting USA turns you off right now. You're not alone. Oh,
I saw this. I didn't actually believe that it could be true, and then I clicked through and discovered that it was.
Is it polling, Dan?
What?
Was it polling? Was it like polling on the issue? Or
no. It was a response to. After the men's hockey team won on Sunday, there was a lot of kind of patriotic fervor, and particularly on the right, people were, very fired up, and Trump's involvement of calling, was seen as great. And this article, I think, was like kind of like, this is a turnoff. And to see, I just disagree. I wish that sports could be a place that is apolitical, just like I thought that the alternative Super Bowl halftime show was ridiculous. I think it's just be happy. America won, right? Like we won, we competed, the athletes represented us. I love the athletes said how proud they were to represent their country. They're not there to represent the person who is the president. They're there to represent the country. And Donald Trump is our president, and that the president of the United States took the time to call into a locker room. I think it's great. I think it's great. And I wish the party could not write stories like this.
Yeah, I just, to be honest with you, it's absolutely insane that we've now boiled down to the point where waving a flag or being patriotic or pledging allegiance. I mean, I feel like we talk about the country being divided, and I know that the Huffington Post is technically a media outlet, but it's just we often overlook the role that they play in the divisiveness, and this is another example of it. So I actually find it very sad that you now have to figure out what side you're on, whether or not you support the country. You should be proud. Like I said, the best part about this is all the crap that the left does is what makes America great. We permit this. This is guaranteed. The freedom of assembly, the freedom of religion, the freedom of the press is all enshrined in our Constitution, which most countries don't have even a taste of. So I think the irony of people who talk about the hatred of the country is that you wouldn't be able to do half the crap that you want to do if it wasn't for the freedoms that this country provides.
I think it's the idea that when something in our culture happens that is like a victory, right? Literally or figuratively, the party in power gets the halo effect. And that, I think, is it's gotten to the point now where the other side or a faction of the other side digs in and says, I'm not letting the political party in power accrue the benefit of the cultural success. And I think, Trump did similar things to Democrats and in the Obama era, of like, you just can't bring yourself to celebrate a success. And that, I think, is just most Americans find sad.
Yeah,
yep.
Totally agree. All right, guys, we are at time. Sean, what do you got going on today on your show?
Nick Sortor is going to come on, and we're going to preview the State of the Union, a lot to break down what do a lot of people want to hear. What are the partisan divides? Does anyone care? I mean, so we'll have I think a very robust, fun conversation about that. And then I'll see you guys in a few hours after 18 more Celsiuses. And, I've been trying to keep East Coast hours, which is going to be very difficult. So
yeah, good luck with that. Okay, so 8:45, guys, come back, join us. We will be going live. I do wonder if he'll actually start at 9. Probably not. So we'll tap
why don't you think so?
I don't know. I just feel like it does it often start at 9? Maybe I just
like 9:05.
So I think he
enters.
I mean, look, just remember, this is more of a coordination with the media. So they'll come in. He doesn't have to. I mean, he has to start probably at 9:03, 9:04, but they're breaking out of so they've got to come in. They usually give the anchors enough time to do the intro. So this is very choreographed. The exact start time, a little off. But remember, when you've got, it's the speaker and the vice president are already in place and they're of your party, it's a little bit easier to do that. So, but again,
so a question for each of you. 1, is Roberts there? And 2, do he and Trump look each other in the eye and shake hands?
I think he will be there, and I think he will try to shake hands with Trump. I don't know what I think Trump will. I don't know. What do you think?
Kind of do like to look away, kind of like a little, or do you think Sean?
Maybe he avoids him, tries to avoid him.
So remember, this is the people are seated, like they're in place. This including the Supreme Court. It's up to the president whether he goes to them or not. Of course. Look, the president, like one of the things that I've always said is that this guy, he is the best at compartmentalizing. So I can see him being very gracious. As I said, he gets the nature of the speech. Everyone, I doubt he will try to make a thing out of this because that's not him. He wants the message to be what dominates tonight.
So let me ask you this. I know we're at time, but the Supreme Court technically could issue a decision today, right? They are on the clock. Would the court potentially do something like the Voting Rights Act today?
No.
You don't throw them a bone.
No, not on the day of the State of the Union.
Okay. All right.
So funny.
God, if you're right about that.
We will see you. We will see you tonight at 8:45. Join us. It's going to be fun. Bring your coffee and your popcorn.
Yay.